Someone asked you if you'd ever lived or worked anywhere besides PEI. What was it you said to them?
No. This is it. They wanted to know why I didn't, and I said, well, if you're born and raised in the best place in the world, why would you want to leave?
From the desk of Justin Shaw. Dear Prince of Nigeria, I hope this email finds you well. How's Benin this time of year? I've never been there, and quite frankly, before our correspondence, I did not even know it existed. I once again extend my sincerest congratulations to your daughter on acceptance into medical school in Paris, France. You must be very proud. I like to think that my parents are proud of me as well, for you see, I too have been accepted into school, but my school's not in Paris. My school is in Montreal, and I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to be an actor, a profession of equal respect and income. Let's talk business. I'm still very much interested in subletting your daughter's Montreal apartment. Now, apologies for the delayed response. It was those bastards down at Western Union who kept trying to stop me from sending all of my money to a person I've never met from a country I've never heard of for an apartment I've never seen. What a bunch of jerks. Now, I'll admit, I too was a tad suspicious at first, but why would the royal family of Nigeria be renting an apartment in Montreal? But what do I know? I'm from Prince Edward Island. You're the Prince of Nigeria. Very soon, you will have received what I hope is the final payment for the apartment. I cannot send you any more money because, and I cannot stress this enough, I do not have any more money. You have all of my money. Sincerely, Justin Shaw. P.S. Do you happen to know of a place in Montreal where I could nab some cheap furniture? As I mentioned, I'm kind of strapped for cash, and I would like to avoid the Facebook marketplace at all cost. You can never be too careful with who you talk to online these days. I'd hate for my money to fall in the wrong hands. The last 10 years of my life have been what the CRA describes as a geographical hot mess. Not long ago, I'm going to a gig. I'm riding on the road with a headliner. He and I are set to perform at the Hungarian Community Hall of Delhi, Ontario. Hold your applause. That's right, I said Delhi. What's next, Summerside? As we're making our way down to the gig, I'm telling the headliner that this part of rural Ontario always reminds me of my home of Prince Edward Island. When suddenly, a black Chevy drives through a stop sign just as we're crossing through the intersection. Time stands still, and I'm thinking, this is it, this is the end, this is the real one. And then I remembered the last thing my dad said to me the day I left Prince Edward Island all those years ago. You be careful, out in the mainland. Could be something dangerous. It's kind of rich coming from a guy who doesn't go anywhere. Really, is that so? Yeah. I knew a guy, Leo. He went to Toronto, visit his daughter. Know what happened? What? Died. Heart attack in the hotel room. And his daughter, poor thing, left with the bill for the hotel room and to pay to fly the body back to the island for the funeral. Wait, you're telling me they had to fly the body back to the island? Yeah. You know how much it costs to fly a dead body? How much? More than a live one. Keep your wits about you. So in that moment on the highway when time stands still, and my whole life flashes before my eyes, the only question on my mind is, why did I leave? I grew up in a small part of Prince Edward Island called Prince Edward Island. And it's wonderful to be here right now in Charlottetown, here at the Mac. It's Saturday night. It's Saturday night. You found parking. That's already a win. I'm excited that you're here because I'm going to tell you a story this evening. It's a true story, and it's the story of why I left Prince Edward Island. Now, I was raised on a horse farm in Kings County, Prince Edward Island. And something about being raised on Prince Edward Island deeply impacts your relationship to literally everywhere else. And it's not just that it's PEI is Canada's smallest province. It is, but there's more. It's that it's an island. And when you grow up on an island, it's easy to feel removed or disconnected from the rest of your country or even the world. And it wasn't until the late 90s that there was a bridge connecting the island to the rest of the mainland, the Confederation Bridge, the world's largest freestanding bridge over ice water, clocking in at just under 13 kilometers, costing a 2-axle vehicle $50.25 to go to the mainland. $50 to go to Moncton. Now, it was believed at the time that the bridge would change life on the island as we know it. There was so much excitement. Some people even compared it to when they constructed the causeway in Nova Scotia. You see, in the 1950s, there was now a young generation of Cape Bretoners who learned that bananas weren't supposed to be brown. It would change life on the island. But despite this, despite the excitement, there were some islanders who were against the Confederation Bridge. They believed that by having a fixed link to the mainland, the island would lose its sense of island identity. And the people who believe this are best described as insane. And not fun at parties. Or it's hard to say if they would be fun at parties, they don't get invited to them very often. But I believe that the bridge actually reinforces island identity. The bridge acts as a threshold between here and away. You have to cross water to get here. You don't come here by accident. You come here on purpose. When you grow up on an island, there's no greater distinction between here and away. Case in point, the Amish. It was in the late 2000s. Several hundred Amish people traveled all the way from rural Ontario to start a new life in Kings County, Prince Edward Island, where I grew up. I was raised amongst the Amish, but I'm not an Amish person. I'm what they call a daywalker. And you tell this to people on the mainland, and you can see the malfunction in real time. I said this to my friend Mike, Mainland Mike, we call him. He goes, "Wait a minute, Justin, you lived with the Amish, but you're not Amish? How boring, then, do you have to be, Justin, to move to an Amish community?" No. They moved to our turf. How boring is your hometown that many Amish people pull up in a literal horse and buggy, look around, and go, "This is the place." And I wasn't shocked by the volume of Amish people. I was shocked by how easily they fit in. And I remember telling this to my wife. It was one of our first conversations together. I was telling my wife, Diana, that I grew up in PEI with the Amish, and she starts saying, "Oh, knowing you, I bet you fooled around with some of the Amish gals." You can't. You can't hook up with an Amish chick. You can't have a one Mennonite stand. Leads to a pitchfork wedding. Because if you hook up with the Amish, you have to join the Amish, and they don't want me. "Oh, welcome everyone to the Amish commune of Kings County. Why don't you meet everybody? This is Brother Ezekiel. He tends to the livestock. This is Brother Malachi. He churns the butter. And this is Brother Justin. He's got a gluten sensitivity." You learn some things when you live next to the Amish. My neighbors, they raised 5 Amish teenage sons, and they drank more than the entire country of Ireland. They'd get into the shine. They'd go into the wagon for joyrides at all hours of the night. One time, they broke curfew so they could go to a concert. They risked it all. They could have been caught, but they wanted to go see in concert. Who do you think they wanted to see? They risked it all to go see Shania Twain. I think that says more about Shania Twain, because how did they find out about her? Truly shocking. They don't even own a radio. They wanted to go see Shania Twain, and I'll be honest, that do impress me much. They went to see her, and they thought they got away with it too, but then somebody took their photo and shared it on social media. And I took the picture, and I didn't take the picture, but I showed them the picture. I was like, "Boys, you got some splaining to do." And they're like, "Oh no, were we that obvious?" Well, the straw hat might have been a clue. and you're 5 young men all wearing suspenders. You're either Amish or an improv troupe. And the only reason they took your photo is they thought you were the band Mumford and Sons. And it's interesting, when you live that close to the Amish, you learn that they drink. They might drink like sailors, but they don't speak like sailors. They do not swear. And I find that quite impressive, especially in comedy. In entertainment, there's so much swearing these days, and I think it's overdone. I believe if you're going to swear in something you're saying, do it once, make it count, make a statement with it. And I let that be a North Star in the kind of things I write and perform. So much so that I had the opportunity to perform on a platform where I got to be recorded. They were going to be broadcasting the performance, and before I got started, the MC said, "Justin, we got some concerns about your material. Can you not do the jokes about the Amish?" I said, "I sure would like to." And they said, "Well, we're just worried, since we're recording it and all, we're worried it might offend the Amish if they see it on YouTube." If you're laughing, that means you're smart. Much smarter than that guy, because the Amish, they're the last demographic of people we can make fun of. It's not getting back to them. Like, even if somebody recorded this entire performance and put it all on TikTok, it's not like Ishmael is going to be like, "Oh, Malachi, check your FYP. There's a goof in Charlatan making fun of ye." Not ye. Ye. But I tell this story about the Amish, not just because it's silly and worthy of being on YouTube. I say it because it's a glowing example of people who come here. You don't come here by accident, you come here on purpose. You leave here on purpose. I don't have a lot in common with my dad. My dad raises horses, and he looks like he raises horses. I look like I read about horses. He works all day in the barn, works with his hands. A report card once described me as an indoor recess kind of kid. Can't wait to find out what that means. He's a very private man, my dad. He keeps to himself. He's not one for the arts. He doesn't come out to stuff like this. He's not even a fan of Anne, some islander. I know. He says the only redhead with braids that he trusts is Willie Nelson. And I respect that, because that includes the Wendy's girl. But my father, as far back as I can remember, has always raised horses. It was just a fact of life. He never said why. There was just always horses in the barn, and if there were horses in the barn, so was Dad. And my dad doesn't raise ponies, he doesn't raise pygmies, he raises Percherons. You're correct. An impressive creature, 15, 16 hands tall, a large, noble beast, and it takes its toll on the mind, body, and soul to raise a creature like a Percheron. So much so that when I was 5 years old, I have a very vivid memory of when 4 of the horses broke loose through the barn and through the fence. Now, in our defense, it wasn't much of a fence, it was more of a suggestion. But the horses got loose, and they started running down Highway 3 of Kings County, and it terrified us. It was scary. There's nothing funny about horses on the loose. But it was summer. I can't help but laugh at the thought of a tourist white-knuckling down Highway 3 as 4 riderless horses start running towards them, thinking, well, this is it. It's the rapture. Didn't expect it to start on Prince Edward Island. But it was around that time the horses got loose. I think my dad discovered just how useless I was in the moment of crisis. He knew my future probably wasn't going to be in the barn, and I hoped my future wouldn't be on the island. Because when you grow up on an island, it's easy to feel trapped. Not much changes on an island. The biggest change in recent memory at my parents' farmhouse, biggest change is my parents got Netflix, which doesn't sound like much, but you got to understand, this is Amish-level technology we're dealing with in our area. And the only shows my parents watched before Netflix were the Beverly Hillbillies and Gilligan's Island, which, if you recall, is a show about people trapped on an island. They saw themselves in the show, exactly. But within a week of getting the Netflix, within a week, they binged the entirety of Breaking Bad. that will fundamentally change your chemistry. Within 7 days of 7 seasons of Breaking Bad, they're not going back to Petticoat Junction. And it says a lot because this is now, it's a gateway drug, much like its subject matter. Now they're down the rabbit hole on Netflix. They're watching true crime, murder, prison shows. You know how upsetting it is to go home and look my mother in the eye and know that she knows how meth is made? She doesn't know the Wi-Fi password. And I'll come downstairs, see them looking adorable, mom and dad on the couch sipping tea on a Sunday afternoon. You see them watching the TV. Oh, what are you watching? It's a man getting murdered at 1:30 p.m. And because they're hard of hearing, they got the TV at full Metallica volume, so the walls are shaking with the sounds of bloodshed. I look at dad, he's asleep. Really makes me second guess naming him my emergency contacts. Dad knows we're different, and he didn't try to change me, but he did try to connect with me. When I was 8 years old, my father introduced something called Father-Son Saturday. You might have noticed I said Saturday, not Saturdays. It's because after one Father-Son Saturday, we deemed it not necessary for a second. I was 8 years old, and my father decided to take me to become a man. I was to go ride the go-karts at a place in Kings County called Radical Jack's Treats and Tracks. And I don't know who Radical Jack is, but he should not be in charge of the safety of children. We show up at the joint, there's no one there. That should have been a red flag. There is one teenager on duty. I presume this was Radical Jack. They go, oh yeah, you're a little short to ride the carts, little man. Dad goes, oh, it's probably fine, because 8 years is a long and happy life. He signs my death warrant. I get into the go-kart that looked like a lawnmower in a past life, handles like a shopping cart. Radical Jack goes, left one makes you go, right one makes you stop. Thanks, tips. I hit the pedal, and I go straight through the barricade. I flip the go-kart once, twice, 3 times, because comedy, and the go-kart crashes. Radical Jack comes running, and he leaps over the barricade. Wow, that was the most flips I've ever seen. Which, to be clear, means he had seen flips before. Just not so many in such brilliant succession. Now, my dad doesn't run. He never runs. My father walks like a farmer going to the bank, meaning business. He sees me, I see him, I start to cry, and he goes, oh, quit your sulking, which is the maritime way of saying, I love you. And I'm sitting there crying like a baby bird, and I'm like, Dad, I think we have to go to the hospital. Oh, I paid for 3 laps. Dear old Dad was disappointed. He was not getting his $14 worth that day. So before taking me to the hospital, Dad picks up the go-kart. He puts it back on the track. He gets inside the go-kart, and he finishes the 3 laps. It was easily the most intimidating go-kart that I've ever seen before or since. Have you ever seen a grown man drive a child-sized car? It was like Donkey Kong and Mario Kart. So Dad never taught me how to drive, but he did teach me the value of $1. I'll give him that. He's a thrifty guy, and I respect it. He'll do anything to save money. Recently, he started raising chickens. He'll tell anybody who will listen why chickens, because according to Dad Math, and Dad Math alone, it's more economically efficient to raise chickens than to go to the store and buy chickens. It's a very roundabout way to tell Loblaws to go screw themselves. So he'll raise the chickens, and once the chickens get to a certain age, we take them to the place. I don't know what or where the place is, but our family does not talk about it. I asked Mom, what is the place? Why don't we talk about it? It's like, oh, we don't talk about the place. It's too cruel. Now, if you'll need me, I'll be inside watching a documentary on Jeffrey Dahmer. So his dad's stuffing the chickens into the crate to go to the place, the final place. I'm like, Dad, what on earth possessed you to make you think you could raise chicken? Why chickens? What made you think you could do this? What? Raised chickens before. Raised you, didn't I? Put that in your skits. I don't know what bothered me more, that he called it skits, or that I did in fact put it in my skits. You're welcome. And I don't like the word skits, and neither should you. I find skits reductive and demeaning. A skit is something a child performs in the living room at a family gathering, which, to be fair, is something that I did do well into my 20s. But I had a certain affinity for skits at an early age, and my dad knew it, and he supported it. Not because I was good at skits, but because he was excited to save all that money on hockey equipment. I was one of the only people in my high school to sign up for drama class voluntarily. Everyone else in the class was a student that was kicked out of another class and needed to make up the credit. And drama class historically was always the class with enough room for more students. But what the principal didn't know about this fun idea was that the people who are getting kicked out of these classes are the same people who bully the people who sign up for drama class. You're putting the bully with the bullied. No good comes from this. Best case scenario, you're taking drama with your bully. Best case scenario, the bully stays your bully. Worst case scenario, the bully is better at drama than you. Oh yeah, we gave the lead to Damien. He brings a certain element of danger to the role. Yeah, he made a shiv in shop class and home ec. But I wanted to pursue skits full time. I wanted it to be my life. And I wanted to audition for theater school, or as my dad calls it, skit school. There's this one school in particular that was doing a nationwide audition search. They were going everywhere across Canada except Prince Edward Island. Another example of an island feeling left out. But for me, I was actually excited. It was my chance to leave the island and do something. I got to go audition in Halifax. And I love Halifax. I'd only ever been once before, and that was in grade 8 for grade 8 travel. I had to sell 39 magazine subscriptions to see where they buried all the Titanic people. I don't know if we have any teachers in the room with us here tonight, but let me tell you, kids love a graveyard. Just drop them off, let them do their own thing. And what tour guide was hired to lead us through this incredibly sensitive subject on a historic site? Halifax's own most hungover college student. Wow, okay, there's a lot of you this week. So this is where we buried Jack and Rose, but not like the Jack and Rose from the movie. They just happened to be named Jack and Rose. And I'm like, buddy, don't worry. We're from Prince Edward Island. We built a whole house for a girl who doesn't exist. Talking about Anne Shirley. I say it again, Anne Shirley. We built a house for Anne Shirley. That's another example of seeing mainlanders malfunction in real time. Like I said this to Mike, mainland Mike. Wait a minute, they built a whole house for Anne Shirley? I'm like, these are facts. Well, wait a minute, how dumb does PEI have to be to pay for a house for a girl who doesn't exist? Oh, mainland Mike. This was paid for by the federal government. We didn't pay for it, we all paid for it. We built a house for Anne Shirley. I live in an apartment. The end. The audition went okay. I was excited to hear back. It would take some time. And I knew once I heard back, if I got in, the acceptance letter, that's my ticket away from here, away from the island. And the only time I'd ever left the island as a kid was maybe once or twice a year with my parents just to go to Moncton. And even that was just for canned pop. I don't know if we have anybody from away with us here today. Allow me to explain some Island 101. So from 1984 to 2008, Prince Edward Island banned canned pop because of reasons. So if you were a munchkin in possession of a can of Pepsi, you're a kid, you show up at school with a can of Pepsi, that is status symbol, that is cultural cachet. You are the king of the Futhamuckin playground. You pull up with Pepsi. And like, it was great. I can't believe I can say this with the conviction of an adult, but kids today do not know the struggle of having to go all the way to Moncton to get a can of Pepsi for 99 cents. But because you got to pay that bridge fare, that can of Pepsi is $51.24 plus deposit. And I don't know what's crazier. That we spend it, or we did it multiple times a year. We would go across the bridge to that gas station. They had a giant sign that said, "Last stop for canned pop." And we would fill that 97 Dodge Neon with as much Pepsi Pepsi as we could. We'd put it in the gas tank if we could get away with it. 10 cases of Pepsi, 5 for the family. The other 5 we would save for the 4 trick-or-treaters that come to our house every Halloween. And Mom's like, oh, why don't we get more trick-or-treaters? Don't they know we have the canned pop? Yeah, Mom, maybe they also know that we keep it in the basement for 4 months next to the furnace. And we live in East Jesus Nowhere. But another thing I love about Moncton, which is a sentence not many have said. Another thing I do love about Moncton is it's home to my very favorite amusement park, Crystal Palace. Oh, I loved Crystal Palace, but every time I went, I'll be honest, I felt a little dirty. Felt like I was cheating on Rainbow Valley. I loved Crystal Palace so much that earlier this year I got flown in for a gig with some other comedians to Moncton because I'm thriving. And we get to Moncton, and I'm the only Maritimer on the lineup, and they're like, oh, what are we supposed to do all day in Moncton before the show? And I'm like, boys, I'm taking you to Crystal Palace. And they're like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, boys, it's the happiest place on earth. We show up, and time makes fools of us all. Turns out when I left the Maritime, so did Crystal Palace. They replaced the beacon of my childhood. They replaced Crystal Palace with a Bass Pro Shop, which is an amusement park for a certain kind of man. Not this one. Not one who signs up for drama voluntarily. I'm losing my mind like it's the end of Planet of the Apes. I'm like, you maniacs! No, you blew it up! Damn you! Damn you all to hell! And the other comics are like, chill, dude, chill. What's the big deal? I'm like, big deal. It was Crystal Palace. It was the best amusement park ever. The happiest place on earth. Oh, it's an amusement park. You just kept saying, happiest place on earth. You were so excited, and its name is Crystal Palace. We thought you were taking us to a strip club. You're fine, people. I think we can all clock collectively that I don't think I have strip club energy. This is the outfit I wore for today. This is not strip club energy. And even if I did have a dollop of strip club energy, even if I had a smidge, I would not take a group of lads to a strip club at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. In Moncton, thank you. The day comes, and I get my letter that I've been waiting for. And I'm in. I'm accepted. I get to fit in someplace. I get to leave here. I get to leave the island. I get to go to Montreal. And the only thing I knew about Montreal was from when I was a kid. I would tune in to CBC Comedy Fridays every weekend, and I would see comedy legends like Mike McDonald perform on the St. Denis Theatre. And if you don't know who Mike McDonald is, it's because he's a Canadian comedy legend. I tuned in every week instead of kissing girls. And now I get to see Montreal, where it all happened. I get to see it with my own eyes. And the day I leave the island, Dad tells me some story about a guy who died on the mainland. Mom, not to be outdone, she says, oh dear, we love you. We're so proud of you. I just want you to remember one thing. If you ever need to kill a man, you stab him with an icicle. That way, when the icicle melts, so does the evidence. It was around that time Mom got the Netflix account. Montreal is located in another country called Quebec. I'd never been to a place like Montreal before. It's been under construction for more than 60 years and shows no signs of slowing down. But if you ask me, downtown Charlottetown could give it a run for its money. But Montreal, even with the construction, it's sexy. It's undeniably sexy. The streets are sexy. The buildings are sexy. Even the garbage is sexy. It's in the language, the Francais. And the area I live in is not only deeply French, it's decidedly not English. And I'm told it's a touchy subject. So touchy, I will not touch it. I had a lot of trouble finding an apartment. I ended up renting an Airbnb that let me renew the lease every week for 3 years. Quit bragging. The Airbnb was located above a sushi place because when you think of authentic Montreal cuisine, you think of airport quality sushi. We shared a Wi-Fi password. It was squid. In the Airbnb, I had a roommate, sort of. She ran a business out of one of the other rooms, a business. She handed me her business card, and it read, non-sensual Swedish massage therapist, which are 4 very interesting words to see on one business card. And you feel like they put non-sensual to try to make it sound not suspicious, but when you see non-sensual, like, doesn't that make it more suspicious? Like, imagine I came up to you on the street and I said, hello, I'm Justin Shaw, non-sensual comedian. You would call the police. And you were very trusting to go right for that handshake. Thank you. You can uncross your arms at any time. Love it. But I don't know what has to happen to a massage therapist at the workplace where they got to put non-sensual in the job title. But if you ask me, that story probably doesn't have a happy ending. Let's move on. So CBC prepared me for Montreal, but nothing, I mean nothing prepared me for theater school. See, I thought theater school was a place where you'd do your skits and learn your lines. Turns out in theater school, you got to take a bunch of classes you don't really want to take, like singing. And I want to talk about how that went. There's a reason this show's not a musical. I had to take ballet, and I know you guys are looking at me thinking, that is a ballet body right there. I had to take movement. Wasn't a fan of movement. If you don't know what movement is, it's a class where you take off your shoes and walk around the room and spend the next 90 minutes wondering if you've joined a cult. The instructor, she had a very soft, elegant voice, like very holistic energy. Class, today our focus of the work is going to be engaging with our kinosphere. I look around the room, everyone's going, oh yeah, kinosphere, kinosphere, kinosphere. They're whispering kinosphere over and over, and they're whispering it like it's a secret, and it must be a pretty good secret, because I don't know what it means, and I don't want to be the only country bumpkin who doesn't know what's up, so I'm like, oh yeah, kinosphere, kinosphere. Fake it till you make it, right? So I started doing a mime routine. That's my kinosphere. I thought I'd be a pretty sweet mime, but I'm a talker, so the instructor, she comes up to check on me. Young man, what are you doing? I'm engaging with my kinosphere. And you're doing a fantastic job. Keep up the good work. She fell for it. I was bluffing. I was totally faking it. And that's when I realized, oh, that's what acting is. Just faking it with total confidence. If you can trick people into thinking that you know exactly what you're talking about and that you know what you're doing, you could be a great actor or the president of the United States. Do you know who didn't like that joke? Yesterday. 2 people liked it so much they gave me a standing ovation and walked away with it. Oh, I didn't fit in theater school, but outside of theater school, I also didn't fit in. I didn't fit in very well with the class. They like to party a lot, and I'm not really a party animal. Like no one wanted to party with the guy who looked like if Elon Musk didn't have any money. I hate when people laugh at that. The artistic director, she was a little concerned about our class. She said we had a, quote, toxic party culture, which was her way of saying we're a good time. And I didn't know what I was missing out on, so I snuck into a party one time, and I wanted to fit in. They were playing everybody's favorite party music, the unsa unsa song. Sing along if you know it. If you can't do it, it's a cat throwing up. All right, we're all singing it together. We're all moving to the beat. I don't dance well. When I dance, I look like the choose your character function in a video game. Just waiting for player one to enter the game. Later in the night, this older kid shows up, Dion. And I don't know who he is. He's not a student, but everybody seems to love Dion. And it turns out everybody loves Dion because Dion brought the drugs. And I don't do drugs. And I look like I don't do drugs. I look like I snitch on people who do drugs. I've been told I have a certain youth pastor je ne sais quoi about me. And I hope je ne sais quoi is French for very cool. So Dion comes up, he's talking to me, maybe he's interested in youth group. He starts to ask me questions. I tell him I'm from PEI. He tells me he's a comedian. And I'm like, wow, I've never met a comedian before. I love comedy. And he's like, well, if you love it so much, why don't you try it some night? And I'm like, I could never. Well, if you don't want to try comedy, why don't you try this? And I said, what is this? And he says, this is drugs. And I said, I've heard of you. What does this drug do? And he says, it makes you feel tomorrow's happiness today. I have exactly no idea what that means, but I wanted to find out at least twice. So I was worried, right? It could be dangerous. And he's like, oh, dude, come on. It's free. And I'm like, what would my dad say? Can't say no to a good deal. So I take it. But I realize this is a strange drug. It's so strange I didn't even know its name. I'm like, what's the name of this drug, Dion? He says, it's called ecstasy. And I said, why is it called ecstasy? He said, give it a minute. But 30 minutes later, I'm on the ground. I'm having what the police describe as an intimate moment with the carpet. Someone at the party sees me, and they're like, Justin, what are you doing? And I'm like, I am on ecstasy. What's it look like I'm doing? Like, dude, ecstasy is MDMA. And I'm like, oh, no. What's that? Like, dude, one of those M's stands for methamphetamines. And I was like, oh, no. What's that? Like, dude, have you seen Breaking Bad? And I'm like, my mom has. Next day, I'm feeling pretty rough. Turns out if you experience tomorrow's happiness today, you don't have any today happiness tomorrow. So I don't fit in school. I don't fit in outside of school. If I wanted to not fit in, I'd have just stayed on the island. So I'm about ready to go jump in the lake when I get a text from Dion, the guy from the party. Hey, bud, it's Dion. Just checking in. Want to make sure you survived that quarter tab of ecstasy. I'm going to be in town a bit longer. I'm stopping at an open mic here tonight at McLean's. Why don't you come try it out? You know, I'm away from my friends, my family. I'm bombing at the thing I thought I was supposed to be good at. I might as well go bomb at something I've always wanted to try. So I show up at McLean's. I meet Dion, and he's stoked to see me. Dude, you're here. I didn't think you'd make it. Well, I can't wait to hear your material. Are you going to talk about your dad or PEI? And I'm like, no. Why would I talk about that? I know what people want to hear about. What I'm holding is the hottest ticket in Montreal comedy. Let's do this.
All right. The room is electric. Let's keep that energy going for your next act. He's a dear friend. Give it up for Jason Sean. Hey guys, we got any Harry Potter fans in the room? Make some noise, hold for applause. Hogwarts has a dirty little secret, but I'm not talking about the author. Anyways, did you guys know that Hogwarts has a janitor? What's up with that? Hogwarts has a guy who has to clean up the school, Argus Filch. What's up with that guy? Why does Hogwarts need a janitor? Couldn't Hogwarts clean their own messes using magic? Apparently not. Hogwarts had to hire a janitor to clean the school by hand. Why can't he just use magic? Because Filch is a squib. You see, in the world of witchcraft and wizardry, a squib is a term used to describe a non-magic person born into a magic family, like Charlie Sheen. So Dumbledore hired a non-magic person to clean up by hand after children who are learning to do the one thing he can never do. Magic, more like tragic. Thank you, those are my jokes.
It's the greatest moment of my life. It was strange. I was so weird, but it was mine. It was my weird. And it was the first time I ever felt like I fit in, but I'm by myself. It doesn't make sense, but it's the kind of thing that only makes sense when you're doing it. So to keep making it make sense, you got to keep doing it. And Dion, he sees me glowing, and he's like, dude, how'd that feel? I said, it feels like tomorrow's happiness today. The next 3 years, it's theater school by day, open mic comedy by night. And after 3 years, I feel like a real Montrealer, hitting up all the major Montreal hotspots, like Saint-Hubert, Déponnay, Eaton Center. And after 3 years in Montreal, it's time to graduate from theater school and move on to bigger and better things. And that means leaving the Airbnb. After 3 years of living in an Airbnb above a sushi place with a non-sensual Swedish massage therapist, that's kind of hard to forget, even when you try. We got our sights set on the future. I'm moving to Toronto. Everyone in my class wants to take the leap to the smoke and try to make it in Canadian show business. Someday, maybe someday, I'll turn on the TV and see myself in a Canadian Tire commercial and a Tim Hortons commercial, all during my episode of Murdoch Mysteries. We call that in Canadian showbiz the hat trick. But there's one problem. Doing theater and comedy might make sense, but it doesn't make dollars. I have less money than when I started. I'm flat broke. What am I supposed to do? It's looking like the reality of Toronto might not be a reality. But there's one option. You see, there's a particular trend amongst young Maritimers who are down on their luck and are in need of a win, a jolt, a boom, a place for young folks who want to roll the dice in the wild, wild west. Out west. Fort McMurray. It ain't hell, but you can see it from there. And I'm embarrassed to go to Fort Mac, because how am I supposed to tell this to my dad? He was afraid of me going to Montreal. What's he going to think about Fort Mac? And I'm scared to tell him, because what if he tries to make me stay on the island? And I can't stay on the island. I can't come back a failure. 3 years in Montreal. What do I got to show for it? 2 minutes of pretty okay Harry Potter stand-up? I've got an acting certificate. Cool. What's that worth? It's worth $40,000. 3 years. I didn't even learn French. The only French phrases I managed to learn were comment ça va, bien et toi, and calice tabarnak. And no one will tell me what that last one means and why they walk away when I say it. So I tell Dad I'm moving to Fort Mac, and Dad says nothing. I'm like, all right, cool. I thought maybe he would try to get me to stay. Maybe I even hoped he would. But it's not until we're at the airport that he even says, hey, by the way, you got mud on your boots. And I saw the mud on my boots at the airport, on the plane, on the curb of the Fort Mac airport as I stand there waiting in the rain for my taxi. And as I watched the rain wash away the last few traces of red dirt from my boot into a puddle of gray Fort Mac mud, the only question on my mind is, what's a guy like me doing in Fort McMurray? Fort McMurray is located in another country called Alberta. I thought the biggest language barrier I would ever encounter in my life would be when I lived in Montreal. But it turns out Fort McMurray has more people from Newfoundland than currently in Newfoundland. Them boys need subtitles. It is an epidemic of great Canadian proportions. It's like some bizarre Canadian sociological experiment. What if we took a bunch of lads from the have-nots, shipped them across the country, put them in East Coast lifestyle hoodies, and then gave them 6 figures a year? What would happen? They turn into cowboys who look like fishermen. And I knew I was in for a culture shock when on the plane to Fort McMurray, I was the only person with a suitcase that was an actual suitcase. Everyone else had a backpack or a hockey bag. One big guy with a beard, he carried all of his stuff in a black garbage bag, which I later found out is called a Prince Albert backpack. He carried it over his shoulder, and he looked like the world's saddest Santa, walking through the Fort Mac airport in his very favorite pajama pants, his Crocs, and a Walmart t-shirt that says, "I farted." Kids would look at him and start to cry. "Who's that, Mommy?" "Well, that's who comes if you're bad." And mate, what kind of work am I gonna get in Fort McMurray? I was afraid to use the bandsaw in shop class, and I'm coming in right out of theater school. What's my interview at Suncor gonna be? Can you tell us about your background? 3 years Shakespeare, 2 years ballet. When do I start? Fun fact, I'm the only person in the history of Syncrude to apply with a headshot. I kept calling the interview the audition. So I didn't quite fit the mold. I didn't get a job at site, but I did get a job at camp. But not like camp, but like a kid's camp. The only job I'm qualified for is babysitting the children of Fort McMurray while their parents work the rigs. So I didn't fit the mold, but when have I ever? So what's a guy like me doing in Fort McMurray? Same thing as everybody else. Fort McMurray is the economic capital of the East Coast, but it has a slightly new claim to fame. Did you folks know that Fort McMurray was recently named Canada's most romantic city? Hold your applause. Some of you are thinking, Justy, that can't be right. Who would make up such a strange story? No, it wasn't made up. This was shared by the good people at Amazon.ca. They cooked up this story based on a statistic. Apparently, more people in Fort McMurray than anywhere else in Canada are buying the most key items from the romance category. Key items. We're all adults. Hopefully. We can all wager a guess what those key items might be. There's romance novels and jewelry and I'd rather not say what they're called, but Newfoundland named a town after it. Right next to Spread Eagle and Conception Bay. God bless Newfoundland. So I don't know what makes a city the most romantic city in Canada, but I do know this. I'm going to tell you this story. I don't want to. That's how you know it's true. And if any of you are offended for whatever reason by this story, I just want you to remember I'm the one it happened to. And I would love it if no one looked me in the eye during the story. You get some long, lonely nights in Fort McMurray, and there was one particular February. I got a phone call from Dion, the guy from Montreal. He's like, dude, I'm in Fort Mac for one night only. I'm on tour. We got to do something special while I'm in town. We got to get lit. And I'm like, I've never been lit before. I would love to. And I'm desperate for friendship because I'm so lonely and I have a hard time saying no to people. So I'm like, anything you want, Dion, whatever you want to do. He says, we need to go to a strip club. And I don't think he meant Crystal Palace. I'm like, I'm trying to play it cool, right? I don't want him to know that I'm a wiener, so I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I'll make a reservation. It's like, you've never been to a strip club before, have you? And of course I haven't. I'm from PEI. We don't have strip clubs, as we shouldn't. We need something left to the imagination. And I'm just trying to let him down. I'm like, Dion, I don't know if I'm the guy you want to go with. I don't have strip club energy. He goes, oh, no, I know. That's why it'll be funny. I'm like, I don't have strip club energy. I have Mickey Mouse Club energy. I've got book club energy. Like, I look like I shop at Indigo or Chapters, but only for Heather's Pick, right? We know Heather's Pick, yeah? Yeah, if Heather didn't pick it, Justy don't want it. So I'm a good friend. I Google Fort McMurray Strip Club, which is the saddest Google that ever Googled, and it's something my browser history is still reckoning with. There's one business in all the land, one strip club, and this business had more one-star reviews that I have seen before or since. And Charlottetown, it's our God-given right. If you don't enjoy yourself someplace, you tell the world by spanking a one-star review and say, don't go to this place. But when you see that many one stars, you're like, I want to know what's going on in there, right? So we show up to the strip club. The only thing that me and this strip club have in common is that neither of us have strip club energy. The energy in this strip club is more the energy you would find at a funeral. Yeah, the staff are looking very sad. Welcome. Glad you could make it. We wish it was under better circumstances. Dion sits in the front because he's a gentleman. I stand there as sad as a horse. And then I get approached by a lady, a professional lady. Hey, I'm Dirty Daisy. Hi, Dirty Daisy. I'm mostly clean Justin. Do you want to dance? I go, oh, no. Because I have a hard time saying no to people. I guess so. And she takes me by my little hand, and we walk like a kid going to the principal's office. And I go to this desk, right, and there's this guy with a cash register. He's the cashier, and that's a generous title. He sees me, and he goes, yeah, for you, that'll be $200. And I'm like, of money? Are you joking? And that's how I know I'm my father's son. My first thought was, if only I had a coupon. I'm thinking we should skedaddle, but I'm looking at her. She's giving me the puppy dog eyes, and I don't want to look like a loser in front of the stripper. So I take out my debit card, and I go into overdraft on a dance I do not want. And then suddenly, as if by magic, the cashier became my best friend. Oh, right this way, good sir. And he opens a curtain. Where are you taking me? I told this story in a town called Strathroy, Ontario. And when I got to the point and I said, where are you taking me? The oldest man in the audience, who I thought had died during the show, came back from beyond the grave, waved his hand in the air like he was ordering a double sarsaparilla. And he says, he's taking you to the champagne room. And then he returned to the crypt whence he came. And there was no champagne in the champagne room. Only shams, followed by pain. We go in and we dance. She's like, no, I dance, you sit. And I'm like, It's my first time. She goes, I can tell. And I'm pretty uncomfortable. I'm an awkward guy on the best of occasions, so I didn't know what to do. So I started cheering for her. I'm like, yeah, because I support the arts. So I'm like, you're doing great. Yeah, those are some great skits, ma'am. Well done. And we finish. By finish, I mean survived. We go back out onto the floor, and she's like, bye, Justin. And I'm like, bye, Dirty Daisy. Good luck at nursing school. I tell Dion I'm done. I'm out of this place. I'm leaving. And he goes, you can't leave, buddy. You gotta do the best part. You gotta ask them their real name. And I'm like, Dion, I don't use the word idiot lightly, but I want you to know you're a jackass. I turn to leave, but then I get approached by yet another stripper lady. And she had more of a boss-level energy about her. And I don't know where in Newfoundland she was from, but I didn't want to gander at her. She puts a boot down in front of me and says, hey, you, where do you think you're going? I'm going to write a letter to my mother. Not so fast. Are you ready to dance with the falcon? If a professional lady with the vocal intensity of Macho Man Randy Savage asks you if you are ready to dance, it matters not what you say. It will happen. She takes me by my little hand. We go to the cashier. I go, hey, Tony. We're on a first name basis. This time I drop another 200 that I don't have. Next time I'm going to ask if I can collect air mile points. He opens the curtain into the champagne dungeon of hell from Strathroy, and she's doing her thing. And I'm like, and I'm trying to make it go quicker. I'm talking to make it go fast. I start asking questions like, why do they call you the Falcon? 'Cause I'm dangerous. Cool. And I can't believe I actually asked this, but what's your real name? She stops. She takes me in and assesses my Steamboat Willie energy. She leans in and whispers so only I can hear. My real name is Heather. I thought, oh my God, I'm Heather's pick. And that's why Fort McMurray is Canada's most romantic city. Are you all right, sir? I could hear you combusting over here. That's good. We all get that way when we think about romance. And I don't know a lot about romance, but I do know that if all you look at is the ground and the dirt, everything looks ugly. But if you look up, you can see a lot more. And it was about a year of living in Fort McMurray when I got welcomed into the community graciously. And for years, I'd felt like a stray holding a suitcase with no place to put it down. And I remember saying, I feel like I've been adopted here. And she says, yeah, we all were. After about a year of living in Fort McMurray, Diana and I realized that we were the last two to know that we were in a relationship. She's funny, she's smart, she works in the community with the Arts Council with Buffalo. She's originally from Ontario, but she grew up in the United States, but we don't hold that against her. She'd never met someone from PEI before. It was her first island experience, so she's hitting me with all the island questions, like, tell me about the bridge, or canned pop, or where did they bury Anne? No one tell her. Then she hits me with, why does your dad raise horses? And I'm embarrassed because I don't have an answer. It's like a fact of life. Just growing up, if there were horses in the barn, so was Dad. Guess I never asked. But these are the kind of conversations we had every night, and soon we started to talk about a future. What does that look like for us? Do we want to leave? Do we want to move? And I'm scared to move, not because I'm in love with the city. It's just that I've been flipped across this country twice already, and I don't know if I've got one more in me. How many second chances are really afforded one person? And we all know Fort McMurray is Canada's most romantic city, but it's not exactly the mecca for stand-up comedy. The only gig I managed to book when I moved there was performing at a variety show on Canada Day at Peter Pond Mall, which, to answer your question, yes, this story does get worse. I show up at the mall, I'm like, I'm here, and they're like, yeah, you'll be on after the belly dancers and before the Ukrainian folk dancers. And that makes sense, and I'm like, yep, keep the room hot, let's go. Yeah, you'll be performing right by the escalator. And I said, great, moving on up, let's go. I go to the escalator, there's no stage, there's no audience, there's no mic. That's what we in showbiz call the big three. What the Peter Pond Mall did have were customers walking very quickly, avoiding eye contact. Because the only thing more embarrassing than doing stand-up in a mall is watching stand-up in a mall. I've never seen people run to a Claire's before, not even on Boxing Day. And I'm trying my best. There's one poor guy who did make eye contact, and he's like, oh no. And I'm like, hey man, do you like Harry Potter? And I chase him onto the escalator. He's trying to get away, and I'm like, come back. And I'm hitting him with tags. I'm like, you're gonna love the ending, wait. I go to the manager, and I'm like, so, that's me. Keep me in mind for future functions. And she goes, well, actually, now that you mention it, I got a friend next door. She runs a bar, and they're doing this big comedy show. They need an opening act. We got this guy coming in, Mike McDonald. And I don't know what was crazier, that Mike McDonald was performing in Fort McMurray, or that I was going from mall comedy and performing on a literal escalator to opening for one of my childhood heroes. And they say never meet your heroes, but in the case of Mike McDonald, that's also true. It's just that he carries bags and bags of intimidation, and those bags are under his eyes. He's got the most penetrative gaze I've ever seen. He's got the charm of Jean Chrétien, but the anger of Jean Chrétien, you know? And he's got this road vet kind of grimace, and I'm like, does he still have it? I start the show off, and people are laughing. They're already having a good time. No one leaves on an escalator. It's a win. I bring Mike McDonald on stage, and the bags disappear. It melts away. He's 90s Mike again. He's Saint Denis Mike. He's the Mike I watched on a black and white TV every Friday on CBC. And I'm watching a pro at work. He's killing joke after joke after joke. And he tells a story about his health journey, how he got an organ transplant. And he said it was the Canadian healthcare system that gave him a second shot at life. He said Canada's organ donating program is the best recycling program in the country. Yeah. And I'm like, this guy's amazing. I'm watching a master at work, and I want to ask him, is it worth it to go for it, to take a second shot at life? But before I can even ask, he's off stage, and there's a whole crowd of people that want to shake the hand and kiss the ring of one of Canada's best. And you got to remember, these are Fort Mac guys. These are guys built like a refrigerator, guys who wear baseball caps, guys who work outside all day, guys who look like my dad. The crowd leaves, and as Mike's on his way out, I call out, Mike, my guy, you got a second shot at life, sir, and you spend it doing this. Why? I like it. See you around, kid. 6 months later, Mike McDonald would no longer be with us. I didn't know it at the time, but it was his last tour. He got a second shot at life, and he spent his whole life living. As I watch him leave, Diana takes my hand. And as I feel her life next to mine, I realize that sometimes second chances don't always look like how you'd expect them to. Maybe that's why Fort McMurray is Canada's most romantic city. From the desk of Justin Shaw. Dear Prince of Nigeria, I am beginning to have doubts about the legitimacy of our transaction. I've been writing to you for 5 years, trying to understand why you would take all of my money and not pony up with the apartment. I thought we had a deal. So I'm leaving Fort McMurray tomorrow with my fiancée, Diana. Her and I are going to start a life together in the beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, a city home to several craft breweries and just as many methadone clinics, and something called African Lion Safari. Perhaps you've heard of it. We chose Hamilton because Diana has family in the city. I've always wondered what it would be like to live in a Grand Theft Auto video game. When searching for a Hamilton apartment, you can imagine my dismay when I found a Hamilton ad being sold by someone also claiming to be of royal Nigerian descent. Ishy fishy, Mr. Man. I show Diana the ad and she says, wow, only an idiot would fall for that. I can't afford a lawyer, so I'm going to appeal to your conscience. Please, you've left me with so much anger and shame and frustration, so much so that I've told nobody about what's happened between us, not even Diana. And her and I, we're trying to start a life together. Please, it would just make everything so much easier if you just give me my money back. Please. Sincerely, Justin. Oh, P.S. I hope your daughter is doing well in medical school. 5 days on the road. 5 days going from Fort McMurray to southern Ontario, and 5 days across Canada. You can bet we hit all the Canadian hotspots. Hainley, Verdun, Moose Jaw, Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, Sault Ste. Marie. Yeah, we hit the Soo. We even hit up Lake Superior in the dead of December. You know what that looks like? Close your eyes. Just saved you the trip. After 5 days on the road, we made it to the beautiful Hamilton, Ontario. Swimming pools, movie stars. As we're getting settled into the city of Hamilton, I get a call from my dad, and he's very confused. Why Hamilton? Why are you moving again? And I tell him that I moved because I want to do something with my life. I got out of debt and I saved some money. Now I want to make something of myself. And he says, and what is that exactly? And with all my big boy energy and my big boy voice, I said, Dad, I'm going to make it in Canadian comedy. And he's quiet for a depressing number of seconds. Perhaps going through the father Rolodex of advice for when your son says something stupid. He settles on, how will you know you've made it? Fair question. Some people spend their whole lives chasing dreams and they don't know if they're closer or further from where they want to be. How will you know you've made it? I get booked for my first gig in the city. It's in a sketchy part of Hamilton called Hamilton. We show up to the venue, and I'm not doing comedy per se. I get hired to do trivia. Trivia is considerably less sexy than comedy, and comedy's not exactly prom king. The venue in question, it's hard to put my finger on the aesthetic. There's a life-size statue of a cow on the roof of the building, and I don't know why that's there, because it doesn't really have a cowboy or Western aesthetic. It looks more like if a basement lost a fight with an attic, you know? There's a lot of roughnecks at the bar, and the manager sees me. Hey, you, who are you? Who are you? And my voice goes up 16 octaves. Oh, hi, I'm Mr. Trivia. Like, oh, buddy, I'm sorry. We forgot to advertise the trivia. I'm going to go home now. No, stay. Do your skits, do the trivia for the regulars. Huh? For legal reasons, I can't state the name of the biker gang that was there that day. I could get in a lot of trouble with the Hells Angels. And they're a tough-looking bunch. I don't want to make them angry or upset. They look like the kind of guys who could beat up a trivia host, which, to be fair, is most people. So I try to butter them up with that old Justy charm. So, are you ready for trivia? I hear someone load a shotgun. I'll take that as a no. And I try to keep the questions nice and easy because I want everyone to have a good time. But they're still getting the easy questions wrong. So I'm not going to be the one to correct them. So I pretend that their wrong answers are right. In the process, I am rewriting chapters of Canadian history. Oh no, you're right. The first Prime Minister of Canada was Peter Mansbridge. Well, 10 points to Mudflap. Well done. We finish, and by finish I mean survive. I'm ready to leave. The manager says, kitchen, now. And I show up in the kitchen, and there's the manager and a line cook. And I'm like, sorry, next time we'll do better. No. You were flawless. Change nothing. You are a prodigy of trivia. We need to talk about this. And he points at the line cook, who is chopping a big pile of watermelon. He's got a huge stack of watermelon. He's chopping it and shoving it into Tupperware. It looks like a sketch from I Love Lucy. And I'm like, what's with the watermelon, my guy? And he goes, dude, duh, it was on sale. If you see something on sale, you gotta buy it, right? That's why there's a cow on the roof of the building. A tale of poor impulse control. I'm like, oh, good luck. No, take some. It's going to go bad. Take some. You'd be doing us a favor. And the line cook offers it like he's offering me a child. Oh, give it a good home. And I'm like, I'll raise it as a masculine melon. Wait. Did you buy any food? No, I didn't order any food off of your 20-page laminated menu. That's the size of a newspaper. Oh, here's $20. Hold on. Record scratch. Hey, wait. What's going on here? He thought because I didn't give him money, he should give me money. Now, I'm no Kevin O'Leary. This is no Den of Dragons, but that's bad for business. But I'm in the business of art, so yoink. Wait a minute. Ain't you thirsty? I'm like, yeah, I got a can of Pepsi at home with my name on it, bud. Oh, no, stick around, have a drink with the gang. You're part of the gang now. And I'm like, I don't know what gangs you think I'm part of, but they might have a dog named Scooby-Doo. Fine. Well, we had to pour a whole pitcher of Coors Light because it was running warm. I was like, well, more for you. You could take it to go. The question I wanted to ask was answered before I could say anything. He reaches under the counter and produces a McDonald's cup. A lid from a different restaurant, and a straw, not in a protective package, just one of those loose dandy straws of the night, ready for action. So that evening, I walk home alone on the streets of Hamilton, $20 heavy in my pocket, holding an orb of melon to raise as my own, sipping a room temperature Coors Light from a McDonald's cup. With a free hand, I call my dad and say, Dad, I've made it in Canadian comedy. Oh, I love the applause of mediocrity. The next 4 years are a bit of a blur, and it gets easier and easier to lose track of time as I develop an appetite for comedy that's best described as downright Canadian. It's dive bars and go trains and legions, oh my. Not legions of fans, Royal Canadian legions. God save the Queen. It ain't pretty, and no one ever said it would be. It was the late, great David Broadfoot that once said, in Canadian comedy, we don't get bodyguards. We get name tags. And after years on the road, I get to meet a living legend. A headliner who takes me under his wing, a guy who shows me the ropes, a guy named Scott Falconbridge. Together, he and I go on the road on tour together. We bashed him in Blenheim. We guffawed him in Guelph. We tickled him in Tillsonburg. That's right, Tillsonburg. My back still aches when I hear that word. And that's a lyric from a Stompin' Tom Connors song. And I only know that lyric because that's the kind of music my dad would play on PEI family road trips. but a PEI family road trip is like driving from Montague to Charlottetown. And I'd be sitting there in the back covering my ears as Dad would play Stompin' Tom Connors or The Fiddler's Sons or heaven help us, the Saturday Night Hoedown. And I'm aware of what day of the week it is today, thank you. Rest assured, it'll still be on when you get to leave the theater. And I'd sit there covering my ears, but now that I'm away and on the road, I miss it. I wish I could turn on the radio and hear the sounds of home again. And it's funny because now that I'm homesick, home is the only thing it seems that I want to talk about on stage. I start telling stories all about PEI and my dad and how my mom taught me how to kill a man. And for years, all I talked about was leaving the island. And now that I finally did, it's the only thing I want to talk about. And apparently in stand-up, if you say you're from Prince Edward Island on stage, it's an open invitation for the audience to tell you their relationship to PEI, and you have to match their excitement. I'm getting tired. Oh, you're from Prince Edward Island. This is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your friggin' little mind. Did you know I got a brother who's got a friend who's got a cousin who vacations in Georgetown? I'm like, wow, no one's ever been that excited for Georgetown before. Oh, you're from PEI. Oh, I just got to ask, sorry if you've heard it. Do you know Jason Gallant? I'm like, don't be ridiculous. Of course I do. He's my cousin. And we're related 2 different ways, but we don't talk about it. Every so often I get a call from my dad. What are you up to tonight, my son? I'm doing stand-up comedy at a craft brewery in Mississauga. Don't know what any of those words mean. Good luck with your skits. Doink. 10 years, he still calls it skits. I don't love it. I wish he would just understand that these skits are important to me. And I'm aware I'm causing a fuss, and it's the same as a kid saying, Dad, they're not dolls, they're action figures. I just want him to understand, because I think these skits are important, and I'm doing okay with these skits. You're here. That's not nothing. Don't applaud mediocrity. So I decide, anytime my dad calls what I do a skit, I'm going to write a skit about him. One day, these skits lead to a phone call from the CBC. Justin, we love your work. We're wondering if you could share some of your favorite stories with us. Is there any that come to mind right away? Yeah, I can think of a few. In my defense, the story, it's a true story of when I was single and living on Prince Edward Island, and it's challenging being single on Prince Edward Island. If you have a Tinder account in the city of Charlottetown, you better have a subscription to Ancestry.com. I'm just saying, when the younger generation says, who's your father? They're just practicing safe sex. If you're not laughing, I'm just as disappointed as you are. So it's a little tricky, but some of us are lucky. I had a friend, she was a matchmaker. She would match her single friends up with her other single friends. What a dream. One day she said, Justin, I found the perfect girl for you. She's pretty, she's single, and I said she's perfect. Does Miss Perfect have a name? And she tells me her name, and it turns out Miss Perfect has the same first name as my dad. And I said, I think I'll pass on this one. And friend goes, what's the matter? You worried you're going to call out your dad's name in the bedroom? And I wasn't, but I am now. Because what if the date goes pretty well? What if one thing leads to the other? What if I don't even call her by her name? What if I call her dad? And what if she likes it? What if I like it? What if her wig comes off and it's my dad? I'm like, Dad, what are you doing here? That joke aired in all 10 provinces. And when it did, I got a phone call from a madman. Let's call him Dad. He says, oh, you really did it this time, Justin. You really did it. Like, oh, come on, Dad. I was just horsing around. No, I mean the guys at work. They heard your skits, and now they want to hire you for the office Christmas party. I'm like, great, did you give them my info? No. And I said, why? I'm not having my work give you money so you can come down and make fun of me in front of my coworkers on Christmas. Like, oh, Dad, I'd have done that for free. That would have been my Christmas gift. But some of the stories I share about PEI, they're not stand-up. Sometimes I share stories about the island, and I put it on the internet, and sometimes these stories get messages from people. Like not long ago, I got this message from somebody who had read the story I wrote about my dad and the horses, and the day they got loose out of the barn down Highway 3. Dear Justin, you don't know me, but I know you. I lived between your grandfather, Donald, and your great-grandfather, Danny, back in Kings County in Lorne Valley. When I was very little, Danny used to give us sleigh rides to school on the cold days, and we would sit huddled together under the buffalo. They were wonderful neighbors. Truly, a life well spent. My wife, Diana, reads the message and says, well, sometimes when you give a piece of yourself to the universe gives a piece back. I don't know what it means to live a life well spent. But something tells me it doesn't include learning your great-grandfather's first name from a stranger on the internet. Guess I never asked. You know, I spent a lot of time wanting my home to understand me, but I never took the time to understand my home. Not long ago, I get booked to do a gig. I'm riding with the headliner, Scott Falconbridge. Scotty and I are set to perform at the Hungarian Community Hall of Delhi, Ontario. Hold your applause. We're making our way on the road, and as we're driving, I'm telling Scotty that this part of rural Ontario always reminds me of my home of Prince Edward Island, when suddenly a black Chevy drives through a stop sign just as we're crossing through the intersection. Time stands still, and I'm thinking, this is it. This is the end. This is the real one. And after I remember the last thing my dad said to me all those years ago, the day I left the island, time goes in slow motion. Scotty manages to turn the car in a sharp 90-degree angle. The Chevy spins out past us, and I'm thinking, I'm about to die on the way to a gig in Delhi, Ontario. And I'm the opening act. The news will read, Canada mourns prolific headliner, Scott Falconbridge. And his opening act continued on page 6. As the Chevy spins out, time catches up with itself. And we find ourselves face to face with the vehicle and the reality that he was this close from ending everything on the highway. The silence is only quakened by the sound of Scott's heart pounding in his chest. My heart is pounding in my pants. There's not an atheist in either vehicle. Scotty asks, "You all right, bud?" And I go, "Yeah. I think I just engaged with my kinosphere." As time catches up with itself, a new reality sets in, and 3 things become clear. 1, Scott Falconbridge saved my life, and for that, I owe him more than gas money. 2, I'm a married man. How do I tell this to my wife without scaring the life out of her? And 3, this place might look like home, but deep down I know it's not. Because if it was, my dad would be here to pick up the car and put it back on the road. That's the distinction between here and away. From the desk of Justin Shaw. Dear Prince of Nigeria, if that is your real name, it's been a long time, 10 years. A lot can happen in 10 years. 3 prime ministers, 3 presidents. We loved Kanye, then we hated Kanye. And Province House is still under construction. No thanks to you, I left my home of Prince Edward Island without any life savings or even a pot to piss in. I spent longer than I care to admit cursing your name. And it took me a while to realize this, but the more I curse you, the more I evoke you, the more I welcome you, the more I let you take more than just my money. And it's hard for me to say this because I know that deep down, in even the most shallow cockles of your soul, you wouldn't dream of apologizing. But I want you to know, I forgive you. I don't want my money back. Keep it. It's yours. Because since losing everything to you, what life has given me is far more valuable than anything I could have ever imagined. I found community in a place where I don't speak the language. I found beauty in a place that everybody called ugly. I found life when I nearly died on the road. And maybe this is the funniest joke of all, sir, but it wasn't until I lost my life savings that I found out I had a life worth saving. And my liege, even if I could press charges, I won't. Life's for the living. The only cure for death is living. My only hope for you is that you have someone in your life to do for you what they all did for me. Sincerely, Justin. Oh, P.S. Go fuck yourself. So in PEI, we say this thing, who's your father, right? But we get to this point in our own lives, you begin to ask yourself, who is my father? I come back to the island and I meet up with the old man. He's in his usual habitat, the barn, reeking of the usual fragrance of eau de cheval. Followed in the distance is the lingering scent of eau de poulet. We catch up, Dad and I tell him about some shows that I've been a part of. He tells me about some true crime shows Mom has come this close to solving. I tell Dad about the road and Delhi and the Chevy. Dad says nothing. So I go, well, Dad, if you think about it, I saved you a ton of money. He goes, how? Well, I narrowly avoided death on the mainland. Dad says nothing. I'm like, well? He goes, well, what? I know you're not dead. So at this point, I got to remind Dad of the story he told me all those years ago about the guy, Leo, who went to Toronto to visit his daughter, heart attack in the hotel room, and she has to pay to fly the body back to the island. And she had to borrow money. She had to scrimp and save, borrowing money from the Lions Club. And Dad says, well, he had to bring him back to the island. And I said, what do you mean they had to? And without looking up from his work, he says, they had to bring him home. And I don't know how to argue with that. How do you argue with a statement like that when my impulse after seeing death through the windshield was to come back and see him? I go, fine, you win. Where'd they bury him? Well, now, after the service, they took Leo down and they had him cremated. I probably could have mentioned that the family would have undoubtedly saved a small fortune if they cremated the body before bringing it back to the island. But they didn't do it for the body. Not long ago, I learned my great-grandfather's first name from a stranger on the internet. And when I did, I learned it's better to ask questions when you can. Dad, why do you raise horses? This time he puts the fork down. Well, some do it for work, others for show, Me, I do it because I like it. I don't know, it's the kind of thing that only makes sense when you do it. You know what I mean? I go, yeah, I do. That's some wise. Yeah, well, you get some wisdom when you're out here forking shit at all hours of the day. You guys have been great, and I know this is a lot for you to take in. I don't expect you guys to believe every story that you've heard here today, and that's okay. That's the only reason I felt comfortable even sharing them. The truth is, tonight I only changed one detail. This was never the story of why I left the island. This is the story of how. 10 years ago, I lost my life savings in an online scam. I was so obsessed with leaving the island, I lost my better judgment and my better senses. I lost everything, and I was too scared to tell anybody, but I told my dad. And instead of telling me to stay, he said, "How will you know you've made it?" To remind me there's more to living than making a living. He said, "You got mud on your boots." To remind me that home is beneath my feet. He told me a story about a guy who died on the mainland, and in the same breath, handed me my suitcase with enough cash to get me started on my journey of making fun of him professionally. And he did do the laps on the go-kart. That much is true too. But I left out one part. Before he picked up the cart, he picked me up too. And we finished the laps together to teach me that when life flips you once, twice, 3 times, you can still enjoy the ride. He never taught me how to drive, but he did teach me the value of $1. $1 what it's worth. Its value is how you spend it. And I don't know what it means to live a life well spent, but your soul keeps score. Dad and I leave the barn. 2 men suddenly more similar than different. We go inside to watch a tasteful TV show about murder with Mom. As we leave the barn, Dad goes for the light and says, "By the way, if you want, you can put that in your skits."